All right. Welcome to episode 10 of the Sandbox.Space weekly podcast. I am your host, Chris, joined by baby girl, who's taking a nap on my lap here. And then our special guest, Mr. Ross Hersemann. You just introduced yourself. The first question I want to ask, we got some exciting stuff today, and we're going to kind of come in hot because I had this OBS issue, so I apologize in advance. It's a free show. What are you going to do, right? Ross, you are a lawyer. We met when you were in law school, right? Were you in your last year of law school? I can't.
Oh, I think I might have been in my last year. Yeah, I was starting to get out there, make the rounds, and start doing my law circuit.
So, just for our starting conversation, why did you want to become a lawyer, man? And why video games and interactive creative tech?
They usually don't go together, do they? I was really interested in this evolution of law where something that I've always noticed is the law is always reactionary. There has to be a problem, there has to be a story, and then we kind of craft policy and reactions to it. And with the rise of social media and evolving definitions of our newest technologies, that the law had not caught up in a lot of ways. And policymakers and politicians and lawyers didn't know how to handle Twitter or live networks for PC gaming or console gaming, privacy issues. And there was just no one out there doing this. And it's something I'm passionate about. It's something that is near and dear to my heart. So I thought, why not? And it's been a niche that I've been enjoying for the last almost 10 years now with my practice. So it's a very fulfilling, exciting, always challenging, always innovative kind of place to, I don't know, earn a living.
Yeah. And you, so you started Loading Law. That's your business. So you're a small business owner, entrepreneur as well, which is always, we'll say exciting, but sometimes exciting is not the appropriate
Without
word
its challenges, but the perks outweigh the drags, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Excuse me. Okay. Sorry. So, I think that, you sort of you got your finger on the pulse of a lot of what's going on. And, even, in my class, I teach about the history of games. So I teach the intro to game design course. And there's, we talk about the history of games, how we got where we are, the console generations, all that fun stuff, right? But one of the things that we talk about, because I pull in a lot of the sort of business-centered things, is for quite a while, technology, so coding, games, operating systems, anything involving code, there wasn't even really a legal framework that could capture any of it. Like there was just no, we have an idea of property, and the idea of property has, been parsed down over the centuries. And of course, we borrow a lot of stuff from European, British law, and whatnot. But then we started to get into this digital world, and there literally was not a legal framework for intellectual IP, or is code even a thing you can protect, and so gaming has sort of been in the center of that since its inception, where it's just there's all sorts of stuff around like Atari and whatnot. So I wanted to ask, just for fun, is there anything sort of the top of your mind that's what is the legal thing? Don't say AI, even if it's AI. What is the legal thing right now in the legal world for the video game space that's kind of on that periphery, where it's it's so maybe new or cutting edge, we're not sure if we have, you can say AI if you need to, but that we don't necessarily have those legal frameworks and precedent in place yet, since it is reactionary.
Well, since I can't say AI, I think that would be the buzzword. I mean, a couple years ago it was NFTs, and then it was crypto. It always seems there's a hot topic in law that's always freaking everyone out. So if it's not AI this year, I think, just given the state of the industry, it's an old problem in the newest ways. It's employment law. It's how are we going to handle unionization in the game industry and making sure that people are getting appropriate credit and compensation for the value of their labor that they're contributing. And it's something that is coming under a big microscope lately with all these industry layoffs. It's a conversation that's been coming to a head for years and years. It's not a new problem. It's the oldest problem, but we're getting some innovative solutions to it. So I think maybe that's the thing everyone is focusing on at the moment, if it's not AI.
Yeah, totally. Well, we're going to talk about some of that for sure. Real fast before we get into it, I do want to I like to do a couple community things. If you're not aware, I think it's until the 19th. So it's currently February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I think until the 19th, RPG Maker XP is available on Steam for free. So if you want to download that, give it a whirl, I would suggest doing that. And then these are our topics for the day, based on our Sandbox email. So remember the Sandbox.Space. You can sign up for our free email there. And then we also have a Discord community coming here soon. But also, interestingly, I don't know what this means or what the takeaway from this, but we have an article that says 17% of gamers identify themselves as LGBT, so on. That's a pretty high percentage, since I don't know I think it's like 3 or 4% of the population at large does. So I don't know if that is a reflection of the diverse nature of gaming, or if it's a reflection on the, I don't want to say maybe openness of the community that I think also comes along with the fact that it's so virtual, like disregarding any LGBT stuff for a second. If you rewind 30, 40 years, all that stuff is based around aliases and screen names and sort of redefining your public presence in a way based around, the sort of gaming. I think it's just a sort of inherent built-in part of gaming culture. You create your screen name, you get your PlayStation Plus and you got to create your PlayStation Plus name. And then of course you can do character creation. And like, I almost without fail tend to create female characters for some reason. I pretty much always do. If you can tell, I am not a female. But curious your quick thoughts on that. This was in the New York Times the other day.
Mm-hmm. I love it. One of my favorite things about just the gaming scene in general is how diverse it is and how it attracts all numbers of people. I mean, speaking to the technology itself, something I always speak about in my classes is the ability of video games to be empathy machines as tools to allow interactive entertainment, but also full immersion in someone else's skin. You have the ability to use this tool, to use this technology, to use this narrative to experience something very different from what you get in your day-to-day life walking around. So sometimes that is something as simple as creating a female avatar, changing your screen name, or allowing some anonymity just in the way you live your life. But I think that's such an amazing tool for change. So if we're getting, greater diversity in the industry, that's the best news that you could have shared with me this morning. I love hearing new stories. I love seeing more unique perspectives, and the more diverse our games get, the more fun and challenging they are.
Oh, well, if that's the best news I can share with you, then I feel like the rest of this is going to be downhill.
Peaked already.
Yeah, seriously.
No, I'm just challenging you. Just keep it coming.
Okay. And then also just starting off the show with a community thing. Microsoft's got a Xbox Business update coming tomorrow, and that is at 3 p.m. Eastern. So they're supposedly, it's called the Updates on the Xbox Business. A very Microsoft name for their event. So I thought that was kind of interesting just as a community thing. If people are...
Business, series capitalism.
Yeah, I'll probably be watching that. I guess let us know if watching those kind of things together on Discord or something is something people want to do. We can always do these, directs as a community if people think that that's interesting. So that is tomorrow, February 15th at 3 p.m. Eastern. I assume.
Any predictions, Chris? Any hot takes? What could it be?
So possibly one's going to be with some more talk about. So this says reports have suggested that they're considering bringing Gears of War, Starfield, High Rush, Sea of Thieves, Indiana Jones, and Great Circle to PlayStation. So we talked a little bit about that last week, bringing games to PlayStation. And then there's, of course, the rumors that Microsoft might leave the hardware business. I highly doubt that that is the case. I just don't think they're still making money. I think that the industry is better off. The games industry, I think, has traditionally worked very well with a sort of three-pronged approach where we have three companies. So, it was Sega, Nintendo, Atari for a little bit, and then we had Sega, Nintendo, PlayStation, and then Sega, of course, got out of the hardware game, and we've had Nintendo, Microsoft, and PlayStation for the past, almost, not quite 25 years, but maybe a little over 20. And so I think that the industry as a whole benefits from having three pillars, particularly since I don't think Nintendo is playing the same game, pun intended, as PlayStation and Xbox are. And so I think you need to have a buffer between PlayStation and Xbox. That's just my, I think the way PlayStation functions now is great. I think they've been really customer focused and creating a lot of great quality. I would hate to see them return to the beginning of the PlayStation 3 era, when they were a bunch of jackasses, to be honest. But what are your thoughts on that?
Spit and fire. Well, as a veteran of the 16-bit wars, that I also love that healthy competition. I love that kind of fanboyism that goes back and forth when it's creating great content.
And you're more of a Sega kid, aren't you?
I was always a Sega kid, so I know I was heartbroken when I saw Sega leave hardware. After the Dreamcast. And
did you have a Dreamcast?
Being 2020, I do, as a matter of fact.
Did you when you were a kid, though?
Did I? Yes, I did.
Okay.
Oh, I'm gonna piss off the whole channel. I traded my N64 at FuncoLand for a Dreamcast back in the day. I have since gotten that Nintendo back. Don't worry, everyone.
That specific one?
That specific one. Of course, I had to go track it down.
I sold my Nintendo, pretty much all my Nintendo games, from Mortal Kombat 2 for Super Nintendo. And looking back at it, I was like, oh, why did you do that? I'll never be able to get that back, I still have my Super Nintendo, but anyway, you were saying I jumped on.
It'll be interesting. Oh, it's all good. I remember being heartbroken when Sega left hardware, but hindsight being 2020 and seeing where Sega has come now, I think that was a great move for them. I think that obviously Sega's doing just fine. So if Microsoft was to leave hardware, I don't think that would be the end of the world for them. They obviously have their own suite of first-party IP that is still very strong. They have their fantastic platform Game Pass. So the way that we play games changes a little bit, and that kind of necessitates some market shifts and some changes in how we do business as well. I would be surprised if they get out of hardware. But if they do, please, I need to be the first to know, because I have to go on Xbox Design Lab and get all the custom controllers possible. I love those things.
Yeah, I mean, the current estimate is that the PS5 is outselling the Xbox Series, so the S and X, by over 2-1, which is a big margin, right? So if this was politics, they'd be getting creamed. But the thing is that business isn't politics. And if you are selling, for every 2 devices your competitor is selling, you're selling 1, but you're still making, billions in profit, then, whatever. I do firmly believe, and we've talked about this on a previous show, that we would not have Xbox Games Pass if the Xbox was outselling the PS5. That the Xbox Games Pass is a reaction to them not getting the hardware sales that they want, in my humble opinion. And
I disagree just a little bit. I think that it's a kind of different marketing approach. Sony has always prided itself on superior hardware in its consoles, more graphics, more pixels, more innovative technologies, whether it was Blu-ray or DVD with the PS2. And I think maybe Microsoft is looking forward to, if people have a PC and if they have multiple consoles and if they have mobile games, the platform might outlive the hardware. So if you can get people into your ecosystem of a subscription model, that might outlast hardware that's always changing. I think it's just a different approach.
I just don't think that marketing decision would have been made if you were the console. If you were the primary driver on console, because the goal of creating these systems traditionally has been wrapped around exclusivity, right? And if you are the current dominant force and you have the exclusive titles, that just becomes this black hole that pulls people into your ecosystem. But if you are not creating that, then you need to find another way to drive sales. So you're not selling the hardware, which means you're not selling the software, right? So you need to find a way to make that up. And Xbox's was like, well, we already have this little thing called Windows that you might be aware of. Why don't we use that as our sort of staging platform? And then Xbox Games Pass kind of came out of that, where it's like, all right, we can at least still sell the software as a subscription, software as a service, if you will. That's my take on it. I think that these companies are pretty shrewd, and you don't create a thing like Games Pass if you're gonna cannibalize and undercut your software sales. But they weren't seeing the software sales. But I agree, it is a different approach. I think ultimately it's probably a better approach. Again, this is why I think PlayStation and Xbox should stay, because I think Games Pass is the best deals in gaming right now as a service. And I think it forced PlayStation to rework, not that I know it did. It forced PlayStation to rework their PlayStation Plus system. And so they changed their subscription service in a pretty significant way. It's not quote unquote as good as Xbox Games Pass, but it's like, it's a lot closer. And I actually think both PlayStation Plus and Games Pass are great values at the moment. But you don't get that unless you need to have sort of two behemoths kind of punching at each other a little bit to get that kind of thing.
And the best thing about that is it just makes a better environment for gamers. It makes games more affordable. It makes more diverse games. It works out. So I hope they keep fighting and they keep punching for a long time, because we'll be the ones who win.
Awesome. All right, you ready to dig into the meat here?
Let's do it.
This is where your legal chops are going to come in, okay? I know that this is not your area of expertise per se, but since it is the largest video game acquisition in gaming history, article, this is out of GameSpot. Microsoft is undermining Activision's independence with latest layoffs, the FTC says. So for those who aren't aware, Microsoft recently purchased Activision Blizzard after, roughly a year long, I think.
Give or take. It's been a little more, I think.
Yeah, after like a year-long series of negotiations and court cases and whatnot, because Activision Blizzard, one of the largest video game software producers in the world, as well as, Battle.net, so they have their own platforms and whatnot. There was some anti-competitive and monopoly concerns that Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard was going to be problematic. A lot of the conversation, and you can, I guess, maybe answer rightly or wrongly so, revolved around Call of Duty, which is generally, next to FIFA, like the best-selling game any year. So I get that. But also, there's a lot more games in the world than Call of Duty, just saying. But you can handle that if you want to. And so this resulted in FTC court filings, which is in the U.S., and then the European Union also had a series of anti-competitive and monopolistic conversations that went on. But ultimately, the deal was approved here in the beautiful U.S. of A. For roughly, I think all said and done, was roughly about a $75 billion deal. All right, went through. There were some things that were done. We can talk about those to kind of blunt the potential anti-competitive nature of this deal. However, last month, Microsoft eliminated 1,900 jobs out of its video game division. And apparently, according to some research here, about 900 of those 1,900 layoffs came from Activision Blizzard and their California offices. So just for reference, the Xbox team before the cuts had about 22,000 employees, and so they lost about 2,000 in the cut. So, about 8% or so, 7.5% to 8%, doing the math at the top of my head here. So, Ross, now the FTC is coming back and saying that they were lied to. What's our initial thoughts on this?
From my reading of what the FTC has been saying as I've been following this case, it seems like a bit of a bait and switch because we've had a lot of conversations just in the public discourse over the impact of what this merger means. So if Microsoft is coming in and buying Activision Blizzard, they're going to be obtaining a lot of very valuable IPs, including Call of Duty and
Yeah,
including
absolutely.
everything, in Activision Blizzard's portfolio. And in theory, if they were to make the decision to make those all Xbox exclusive, that would give them a fantastic market advantage over PlayStation and over Sony. That's not something that Microsoft has ever said that they would do publicly. It's a speculation. It's just maybe what we would do if we were somehow put in charge of a major company.
Though I
But
think somebody did an analysis, and this was end of last year, so who knows what happened in the next couple ones. But it was something like 75 or 80% of their titles that were coming out of Activision Blizzard were looking like they were going to be either permanent exclusives or timed exclusives. So there were games like Outer Worlds and stuff that swapped over. But yeah, to your point, they definitely did not come out and be like, we're making everything exclusive for sure.
Mhm. So it's a major concern for players, especially those who enjoy the PlayStation ecosystem and like playing those titles in that space. They would hate to lose access to their games on future console iterations or in the next generation. So I know the FTC is always loving to restrict monopolies and encourage competition. That's what they're all about. So if this is one of the biggest acquisitions ever, they're going to take a very keen interest in the case. Of course, on the flip side of that, are there other competitors out there? Are there other studios? Are there other opportunities for consumers to get access to games? And of course there are. We have Valve, we have Epic, we have the whole entire mobile market, and of course Nintendo. So there's no shortage of studios, no shortage of platforms out there. Microsoft was not, taking a bite that was too big to completely change the game here. Now we're seeing the FTC is kind of revisiting this. This merger kind of skated through after a lot of effort, and I imagine there were lots of conversations that were had behind closed doors. This is just me speculating. That Microsoft would not engage in certain practices. There would not be certain closures. There would not be certain layoffs. There would not be this or that to kind of maintain the amount of competition and autonomy that we've experienced so far. And maybe now that's not what this is looking like.
Yeah.
Uh,
Let's
of
pause
course,
for a
these
second.
layoffs don't, of course. Yeah.
No. If you want to do your final thought, just because you
I
threw
was
a
just
lot of
going to
things.
say sure. These layoffs don't exist in a vacuum. So it's not only Microsoft laying off, 1,900 people. We've had, I think, in my last count, over 10,000 layoffs this year alone from multiple studios, from multiple developers industry wide. So it's not just Microsoft. So I wonder sometimes if, this was the plan all along. We were always going to shut these things down, or if this is just a market reaction to our current economy and our current game market.
Yeah. Pumpkin, don't start a fight you can't handle here. So you mentioned bait and switch, and I think that's kind of the general gist. So again, for those who may not be as aware in the know, one of the conditions for this merger to occur was that Activision Blizzard was supposedly going to be treated like an independent entity. So it was going to run more or less the way it had been run. Obviously, Microsoft would now own the IP associated with any of these Activision things, Activision Blizzard things, and would be more or less functioning autonomously. However, the layoffs that are sort of listed here, a lot of them seem to come and even this is in Microsoft's words, from redundancies, right? And in mergers, you always have these overlap positions. So, in any big company, you've got your HR people, you've got your marketing people, you got your lawyers, you got your legal people, accounting. You have a series of outside of the developers. I think when we tend to think about jobs in the industry, we think about like game developers, right? But these companies have a whole host of support staff and Halo services and stuff. And I think that's one of the concerns is like Microsoft's like, well, we already have HR people and we already have lawyers and we already have accountants. We don't need yours. And so the question then becomes, well, you said Activision Blizzard was going to function as an independent entity. That does not seem to be how you are, functioning since you just knocked out 900 people out of this company. So I think that that's the sort of core thing that the FTC is saying. That they feel like it is a bait and switch, that they were promised that Activision Blizzard was going to function as its own entity that could be divested at any time if needed in maybe another cell or whatever. And then you went ahead and chopped off 900 people out of this company. I would say at a bare minimum, it's not a great look. It definitely does not. I mean, in any merger, there's going to be redundancies and you're going to attempt to create efficiencies, right? Like that just literally everything you buy, you don't need to have 100% of the people that you brought on. But when you tell the court, and generally the courts, I mean, this is my take. I could be wrong on this, but generally I think the courts don't like being lied to, right? Like, is that fair?
It's, as a rule, I think that's okay.
Yeah. So, I am curious about this. They came back in a response and they said that, for example, here's a quote. Additionally, Sony and Microsoft signed a binding agreement to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation on even better terms than Sony had before. And that was kind of like, for me, I kind of like rolled my eyes. So it's like, well, yeah, you sort of had to do that or you weren't going to get this job. Like you weren't going to get the deal, right? Like you needed to create something to keep Call of Duty multi-platform. So yeah, thoughts on that? Just out of curiosity, this is a side question. Do you think Call of Duty is a system seller? Do you think it's as powerful if Xbox was like Call of Duty is now exclusive to Xbox Series X and S? Do you think that would have been as big a deal as, yeah, it would have pissed a lot of people off, don't get me wrong, right? But do you think
the killer app?
Yeah, is that a killer app? Would that be enough to significantly increase console sales for Microsoft? You know, is it as big a deal, or would it just create a bunch of pissed off people?
It depends what room you're in. Viewers of the podcast.
A very lawyerly response.
My favorite answer to everything is always it depends. But I was asking my students this week. So I have classes in game development and game design and game business as well. But I always ask my students because I always look to them as kind of an interesting bellwether of changing and evolving trends. And I said, how many of you have PlayStation? How many of you have Nintendo? How many of you have Xbox? I didn't have any kids in my class who had Xbox. All of them were Nintendo PC or PlayStation folks. Now, on the
Really?
other
Wow.
hand, I taught, which was very surprising for me. But on the other, and this was a decent sample size. This was over 3 classes, about 100 kids. So on the other hand, I am talking to friends of mine from college, and they're all Xbox folks. You know, we all got hooked on Halo, and we all kind of stick around with Xbox. But my friends who play Call of Duty, I asked, where do you play? And they all play on PC. They don't play console at all. So I think people tend to follow their franchises to their platforms. And when something's multi-platform, they're going to play it on what they already have, what's the most versatile, or what's the best value. So if you already have a $10,000 gaming rig, you're going to do most of your gaming there. Even if you do have consoles, you're going to play most things in one place. So I think that people will follow the titles where they go. I think if they were to go exclusive, the hardcore fans were going to play it there. But I also think they would play it wherever it is. You know, I don't think it's a changing of brand loyalty necessary. They're just going to follow the games wherever they go.
Yeah. Yeah. Platform loyalty is really interesting. For me, I just don't. So I didn't have the original Xbox. I was a Nintendo kid, so I fought in the good fight against the Sega barbarians. But I had PlayStation 2, didn't have a PlayStation 3, and I got an Xbox 360. That was my first Xbox. And I got that because the online infrastructure, the way they had it set up was just so good on the 360. It was just, the ability to have the
Live was better during the 360 era than PlayStation Network, hands down.
Yeah, totally. And it was just a really it was a time when all these cool games were coming out that had these really fun online components to them in the console world. And yeah, that online stuff had been around in the PC world for, a while, but in the console space, it was just, Xbox just did it really, really well. And I never had a PS3. And I didn't even really play the PS3 other than a friend had it, and I played Metal Gear Solid 4. We beat it all in one night, it's a pretty long game. And then Last of Us came out, and people were just talking about The Last of Us, and I own 2 copies of The Last of Us for PS3, and I do not own a PS3. So take that for what it's worth. I borrowed the PS3 from a friend, and I played The Last of Us on it, and it was awesome. And then the PS4 came out, and the Xbox One had that disastrous E3 launch, and I was just like, you know what, I'm out. I'm going to PlayStation again. Like, PlayStation just had these really great exclusives and stuff, and to this day, now there's just nothing in the Xbox exclusive ecosystem that really attracts me. I just don't. I'm not a Halo guy. I know that's sort of a heresy in a lot of circles. I just didn't really like Halo, and I can't think of a game that's on the Xbox platform that would be that killer app. And for me, Call of Duty would not. Like, I play Call of Duty every so often, but so I'm sure there's others like me as well that just kind of they found the exclusives, the types of exclusives that they like, I guess, and then they just go to where that is. But I mentioned the Outer Worlds. The Outer Worlds does sting. When they said that was going exclusive to Xbox, that hurt me in the ticker, because I did like the Outer Worlds 1 a lot. I played that on PlayStation. But maybe we'll find out tomorrow that we're going to get a whole bunch of games for PlayStation.
Who's to say? I don't know. I'm kind of excited because I miss big announcements. I love hardware announcements. I love platform announcements. So maybe we'll get something exciting. Maybe we'll get a new direction that's going to kind of make all parties happy here. Who knows? Maybe we just have to be patient.
Yeah. Who was it? I'm totally blanking. There was an announcement. Probably should have put it on our Sandbox Weekly here, that somebody was trying to not necessarily recreate E3, but kind of step into the fold. And it wasn't Jeff Keighley. Oh man, my old man brain isn't working. But yeah, we don't have we don't have like the big shows anymore where you get those announcements. It's all these smaller.
Well, everyone has their own.
Yeah.
The decision was kind of made. It's easier to do your own show, run your own show, control the news cycle, and you'll get more clicks.
Yeah. You want to know something cool? GDEX behind the scenes. I guess I could.
Ooh,
dish. All right. So I'm gonna spill the tea here, but I'm going to preface it and asterisk it that we have not committed to anything yet. But we've been talking internally about taking our GDEX Game Awards that we do every year and making it a little bit more of a show where we have trailers and sort of world firsts announcements and things like that. Not like this 3-hour extravaganza. I still want to keep it, reasonable. So maybe 30 to 45 minutes or something. But this year at GDEX, maybe create a little show out of it. So I guess if listeners think that would be interesting and they'd want us to do something like that, I think it'd be kind of cool. GDEX is kind of like this big coming out party for a lot of indie studios. And so if we could grow that and create, a mini E3 that's focused on maybe the smaller games. I don't know. What do you think?
Please, everything.
More everything.
More everything. No, GDEX has been one of my favorite shows for years, and I think that is going to do a lot of things. I think that's going to be fun for attendees, and I think that's going to be a great way for studios to show off their stuff and get some recognition for what they've been making, because it's hard out there to get seen. The hardest thing to do as a game developer is to get seen in this industry. There's just so much amazing content out there, and some of them have deeper marketing budgets than you do. So anything you can do to increase visibility is helping the little guy. So keep it up, please.
Yeah, that's what we were thinking. If we can create another mechanism to get the word out for folks, get more publishers and press putting their peepers on it, and it just could be fun. Like, we've got a lot of great games. We could do something that's pretty fun. So we're gonna kick the ideas around a little bit. Jiggle some stuff, see what comes out. Whatever metaphor or aphorism you want to use, we'll just stick them all together and we'll end up with something. Okay. we're approaching our landing here. Time goes quick as it always does with you, Ross. So I'd like to pull into our last thing, unless you have any last thoughts on this FTC conversation.
Well, we'll stay tuned on the FTC thing. So there will be lots of developments, I'm sure, so we can always circle back. But let's jump into our next thing.
Okay, so today is February 14th. It is Valentine's Day. So happy Valentine's Day, Ross.
Happy Valentine's Day, Chris.
So my blog post for the Sandbox Weekly, and haven't released it yet. I'm still cleaning it up, but I've just wrote about my love of video games, which I know is sappy and silly. But the reason,
That's so pure. I love that.
let me tell you the reason that I'm doing this is because during COVID, I went through a lot. So there was COVID, obviously. So the pandemic in of itself was a thing. We closed our office down. The business almost went bankrupt, probably half a dozen times during that period. So just trying to keep the business going during that period was incredibly tough. I had a couple physical injuries, and I was separating from my wife. So you can put all those things into a bucket. And it wasn't the best time, we'll say. And one of the things I noticed is that, like, I wasn't even playing many video games during that time because I was just like, it just seemed like work, like even just turning on a game and playing it was just a lot of work. And even over the couple of years, I mean, this is like a 3-year thing, 3-year period. And then recently I noticed in the past couple of months that, like, I've really gotten back into, like, enjoying video games again. Not just playing them and doing something, but, like, actually just there will be times where, like, our friend Yuo will come over and might play something or whatever. And I'm just like, man, I love video games. Like, they're just, when they hit, man, they just hit. They're so good. And they do something. I watch movies, I watch TV, but video games just do something that other mediums just don't do, right? And I think about, like, Cyberpunk. Sometimes just, like, driving around in that game in the city is just, like, an amazing experience. I'm doing anything. I'm just, like, putzing around in my car. And I've been playing some really cool games. I just played Returnal last month. Was our game club game, PS5 exclusive, and I platinumed that. And, like, I was really into that. And so I want to spend the next 15 minutes or so, just you and I, talking about our love of video games, because I think it is an industry that does some amazing things. And you and I'm a little older than you, but we grew up in pretty much the start of the game industry, more or less, as we kind of see it. Yeah, there were arcade machines and whatnot. I was born in '81. But when you think about, I had a ColecoVision. That was my first console. And you got Atari. And then I really started getting into it with Nintendo, Super Nintendo. And I think most people would consider Nintendo, the NES, to kind of be the start of modern gaming, I would say. And I think that's cool. It's very unusual for somebody who is into something to live through the entire existence of it. Right? Like, you could really love music, but you weren't around 100,000 years ago when people were first discovering that you could bang something together for percussion, right? But we've gotten to do that. We've gotten to see the technology change. We've gotten to see controllers manifest. Like, we grew up at a time before there was even a steering wheel for games, and now every controller is more or less the same now. Like, we've developed a language around these things. So with all that being said, let's gush about video games.
I love your gaming origin story. So mine, I was a little bit more of a 90s kid. I was born in '88, so my first console that felt like it was mine was a Sega Genesis, and Sonic was my first love of franchises, my first game character, and still is to this day. So I fondly and also I fondly remember games at that time. I remember lots of fights on the playground over Nintendo versus Sega, and
Mm-hmm.
how that went. And it's been, over the last couple of years, just very validating for me that, well, for a long time, that I get to work in an industry around a passion that is so near and dear to my heart. And specifically, growing up as a Sonic fan, the last couple of years seeing the successes that Sega and the Sonic franchise has had with mainstream popularity with films and Netflix shows and toys, and the just how pervasive it is, and just seeing it everywhere I go, it's just so validating for me that something I loved so much as a kid that I literally got into fights over about, establishing a presence and it's just right to exist, is something I see everywhere now, and that's so popular. Seeing Super Bowl ads for a Knuckles TV show, it just makes my inner child so happy.
Yeah.
It's a very, very validating thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize, or at least a lot of younger folks, that when we were growing up, gaming was a thing that was big, but it wasn't anything like this, right?
Hmm.
And gaming was still a thing that mostly nerds did, and that's
Hmm.
just not the case anymore. I think I always say in my class, like, I'm not interested in figuring out what is and is not a game, right? Like, if it's digital, it's got some sort of interactivity on it, it's a game. If it's a walking simulator, if it's a graphic novel, whatever. Um, but now it's just completely different. It's just part and parcel with people's lives, which I think is really, really cool. Um, and Hey, sweetie. And I guess when I think of like gaming, um, I, I feel like an old man. Like, I try to like explain to my students like what it was like to see these technologies develop, right? Like, how awesome was it to see full motion video in games in the 90s, right?
Hmm.
Like The Seventh Guest is one of my favorite games of all time. I love that game. By today's standards, it's clunky and weird, but I love it. Um, my favorite game of all time is Chrono Trigger. And like, just seeing you'd get your EGM or whatever, and you'd be like, "Oh my god, this is what's coming out." I mean, Donkey Kong Country, when that game came out, oh my god, that game was
That's Video
amazing.
Game Magazine, kids. Electronics Gaming Monthly.
Yeah, EGM. Does that? I don't think that exists anymore, right?
Oh, sir.
Um,
Just in our hearts.
yeah, but I just feel like games have this way of. Well, I guess let me ask you a question. Are you more and I'm simplifying, I'm being very reductive here, but are you more of like a gameplay gamer or a narrative gamer or something in between, or is there another way you would define yourself?
Oh, I mean, yes is the answer. I'm kind of a community gamer. I love those days where I'm playing a game just to kind of engage in some escapism and transport myself to something else. But I love those games that are based around playing with other people in that multiplayer kind of environment. I miss those Halo LAN parties. I miss those sleepovers with Mario Kart when I was a kid. And there's just something very special about plopping down on a couch with a pizza and some 2 liters of soda and beating that campaign with 3 of your friends.
Sure.
Over an evening. And I think that's something that we saw evolve in just every new console cycle when we were kids in the 80s and 90s. That new leap was just so exciting. And it's I don't want to be jaded here in my mid 30s, but it's kind of a hard thing to
Join us
reclaim.
over
That
here.
that kind of excitement is hard to reclaim because I just remember with every new console launch and everybody wanted to get that thing for a birthday or during the holidays, and it was like, oh my god, this console has a DVD player
What?
and this one has wireless controllers for the first time ever, and now computers can go on, or now our consoles can go on the internet, and now they have hard drives, and oh my god, now there's Netflix on here. I can plug my iPod into my Xbox. So just every one of those technological leaps forward. Uh, I feel like we were sitting front row center for it, and it was for
Yeah.
us, and it was something that was very much defining for our generation, and it continues to do that as I see new generations of consoles come out, and I see my students just gravitating towards these games and identifying with them, and the love that they have for things like Valorant or the controversies that are getting stirred up with things like Pal World that they're so passionate about. It just reminds me of our stuff, and I love seeing them kind of take up that mantle and enjoy it the same way that we continue to.
Well, that was a great response. Yeah, I go back and forth. I like gameplay, but also as I get older, my desire to have some sort of story or narrative experience that's like meaningful increases. And so I've definitely gotten past the point where I'll play any game. Like back in the day, I would play crappy games, or not even crappy games, but like mediocre games, Even if the story wasn't that compelling. It's just like, it's a game. I'll play it. I'll get through it. Nowadays, if the story's not compelling and the gameplay is not interesting, I'm kind of out, right? But if the gameplay's, mediocre, but the story's really interesting, then I'll keep like Spec Ops: The Line. I love that game. I think from a gameplay perspective, it's not particularly stellar. It doesn't do anything like super interesting or whatever. It's solid. Like it's a solid kind of like B gameplay. But what it's doing sort of narratively and within the structure of a game, I think is really interesting. But then every so often, I'll just dig into the gameplay of a game. But if you can combine those two, like you'll have me hooked, right? Like that's why I really liked Returnal, because I thought the story and how it interweaves with the gameplay was great. Same with Diablo. If Diablo 4 didn't have that sort of story I really grooved on, I probably wouldn't have played it to completion, and almost got to a level 100 on hardcore, but then I got busy. But I think that for me, just sitting around sometimes and playing games, particularly like when they get real intense, I don't necessarily consider myself like a great gamer, I guess, but like I am very good at it. So it's one of those things like I've beaten a lot of hard games in my day, and I tend to play games baseline on hard difficulty, and sometimes I'll go and play it on the hardest difficulty. And I've made my way. Hey, sweetie, can I help you? I think she wants TREATs, but it's not time yet. But those times when you just like, when you are in the zone, when you're doing something that's just so intense, and it's like, you're just in it, and then it ends, and like the world kind of comes back to you, and you're out of that tunnel vision. You're like, whew, that was something, like that's it's just a great feeling that I think video games are second to none in. And I'd love to see where the industry goes. I would agree with you in some senses that I think we haven't had one of those big, like, oh, wow, kind of moments in gaming in a bit. Maybe GTA 6 might be that, like they're certainly setting the stage to try to make it. But, the PlayStation 5 is awesome. I love the PS5. I think it's a great device. But it really is just like a supercharged PS4. And it's got a lot of things that the PS4, can only dream of doing. But the jump between the PS1 and the PS2 was like monumental, right?
Sometimes it feels like we're at a point of diminishing returns. Like I love my PS5 and the refinements over, the hardware and of course software. You can see it. Anytime I pick up a PS5 controller, I feel like I'm holding something very special. It's just a drastic improvement over PS4, PS3, PS2 controllers. But I think it's kind of a point of diminishing returns, that because you're speaking to that jump of PlayStation to N64 to PlayStation 2 graphics was so huge, and it seems like things are it's a little bit more incremental. Now I know that the tech folks will hand it to me online and talk to me about ray tracing and high resolution gaming and high refresh rates, but I love this shift that we've had. It's been less about hardware and more about narrative and aesthetics the last couple of years. The games that I talk about the most aren't necessarily the ones with the most beautiful graphics. The games that I talk about are the ones that had a beautiful aesthetic, a meaningful narrative, something that was deeper than just a very superficially pretty game. And I love seeing that diversity of games that are out there right now.
For sure. Have you played Returnal yet?
I have not played Returnal yet. No, that's on my to-do list.
I'd suggest playing that and put on a good headset, or if you have a good sound system. The sound design in that game is like, it's really making use of the.
So big.
I'm totally blanking right now what the PS5's audio chip is called, the spatial audio chip. Yeah, I can't remember what they call it, but it's
something special. I notice it every time. I've got a 5.1 Yamaha on my main gaming rig, and I was playing through the remaster
the Tempest engine. That's what it is.
I watch horror movies every night. I watch loud football games, and none of these things scare my husky who can sleep through anything. I was playing Last of Us Part 2, the remastered edition, and the Foley work in that game had her like just terrified.
Oh yeah.
She was the biggest scaredy cat. So my dog is afraid of clickers, and it just goes to show like how impactful that sound is.
Yeah, I think Returnal has some just great sound design. It's worth checking out. It also makes good use of the controller, the Dual Sense controller. Since Housemarque is, well, now they're a first party. They were a second party, but they really made use of that technology, which was cool. So, yeah, I think just lastly closing up that. Our industry is very special. I would like to see what this additional power can do on things like AI and simulations, and like maybe let's move away a little bit from spending all of our resources on graphics and ray tracing and path tracing and everything. Let's see what we can do. Some really cool AI, enemy combat stuff. Last of Us Part 2 has amazing enemy combat, like how it responds and whatnot. So I think that maybe that could be a direction. Simulations could be another direction that we go into with this new increases in power. Let's see what kind of cool stuff we can do. But just sort of in closing, I think just our industry just does amazing stuff. It's filled with amazing people, and the experiences that have been created over the past 40 years for me have been, they have altered and dictated the course of my life in many ways. And I'm extremely grateful that I got to be a part of it from the beginning, and that I somehow stumbled into this industry as a person who helps to make games and support people that make games. It's certainly not easy, but it is a wonderful industry, and I think that we should be proud of it, but we should also treat it with the respect and the reverence it deserves, and that we should be always advocating to make the industry the best it can in smart and strategic and kind ways. And I think that if we keep doing that and we keep working together, the next 40 years of gaming will probably blow our minds when we're sitting in our retirement communities and talking to each other, playing games, playing our Call of Duties on PlayStation, 15s or whatever. So Ross, we're going to wrap up here. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you everybody for watching. A couple quick reminders, the Sandbox.Space, if you want to sign up for our email list. We are posting these videos on our GDEX YouTube, so you can, if you miss them, you can watch them later. And then www.thegdex.com. We are starting to post a whole bunch of updates. Of note, tomorrow, or I guess today, I was used to yesterday. Today, we are opening up our exhibitor applications for previous sponsors and exhibitors. And then towards the end of this month, we will open up our exhibitor applications to everybody. And we are doing a self-purchasing system this year. So when you put in your application, if you get approved, you'll get access to be able to buy the booth space that you want on the floor. So you can just look at the floor map and choose the one that you want, as opposed to us kind of assigning them. I say that just to let people know that means that booths are potentially going to go fast. So if there's a specific area or a specific number of spots that you need, I would suggest getting in sooner rather than later, because we cannot guarantee that spots will be there, in the next couple of months or whatever. And GDEX is October 25th through the 27th this year. So we got some time, but just letting you all know. So Ross, thank you so much for being on the show. Happy Valentine's Day again to you and yours.
You as well. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, this has been episode 10 of the Sandbox Weekly podcast. We do every week on the GDEX Twitch and also YouTube. We do at 10 a.m. Eastern time, where we talk about the video game industry and the business of games. I am your host, Chris, joined as always by Baby, who's back there now eating. Our special guest today was Ross Hersemann of Loading Law, so make sure you check him out. And we appreciate you being here, and we'll see you next week.